Coach Human here for the Successful Life podcast. Back with our guest today. Really interesting topic we'll cover today. We'll cover some software development. We'll cover leaving your corporate job and finding your own dream with Ryan Kuhn. Welcome, Ryan, to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Coach. Really excited to talk with you today.
My favorite is to talk about entrepreneurs who leave corporate to go on to greener pastures, hopefully, and to talk about their journey. So that's where I began, and where a lot of people, I guess, actually began. Tell us a little bit about your story, and then we'll dive into it from there.
Yeah. Well, I guess going back, my background originally grew up in the Chicagoland area, went to a Big Ten school here in Illinois, University of Illinois, Fighting Illini. Moved up to Chicago in 2007. Like a lot of young first-time graduates, started working for a big corporate America company. Started working for a large global investment bank, working the crazy 80, 90, 100 hours a week in banking, wearing a suit to work every day down on LaSalle Street. And ultimately, after 3 or 4 years of doing that, decided, this isn't really for me. And I'm no longer learning. I'm no longer really, frankly, having fun going to work every day. And at that point, it was time to make a switch. And for me personally, that involved kind of taking a step back, assessing where I wanted to be 5, 10, 20 years later. And ultimately, I saw things going towards more digital, more technology. So at that point, really decided to commit to technology. Spent about 2 to 3 years or so learning how to code in order to launch the business that I'm running today, which is called Avail.
And what time frame was that when you made the move?
Yeah, that was 2012. So for me, I spent the heart of the recession back in 08, 09, working in banking, survived that. And then it was really after things returned to normal in 2011, 12, where it was like, this is more just a grind, and I'm no longer learning and no longer having fun.
So I'll give you an interesting story. So I went into corporate after I got my MBA, and then shortly after 9/11, I was working in technology in New York City, and I had been thinking about making a move, and I only been in corporate for a few years, but that locked me into it, and to that thought process. Just having done business with a lot of people that were in that building and all that. But taking a step even further back, when I was in college, I was getting my MBA in management of technology, and I taught myself how to code HTML. Now, HTML is a language, almost everybody has a little bit of HTML skills, but way back then, I taught myself that skill set, and it kind of developed my first website. So when I made the move, I was in tech, and when I made the move to start my own business, which I'm a football coach, but my business is running football events and showcases. I developed my own website at the time. That was really how I actually launched it. I actually coded it up with a little JavaScript here and there, and that was it. And that's evolved since then. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, we use WordPress and all that kind of stuff now. But back then, I actually coded up my first site to launch my own business. So it's people don't realize just having some skills in technology and where that could take you. So you made that move. You went from being a investment banker. You went through that 2008 recession time period, got into 2012, which was as we were starting to get that road back. I'm a big believer in pivoting. I've pivoted a few times in my own business. I pivoted, making a move just like you did. What made you choose to go into software and then obviously the industry that you chose, which is rentals and helping landlords be able to do things themselves there. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, first of all, back in 2012, this is, back when Uber was really just getting rolling and stuff. And I started thinking to myself more and more, I can order a car from my phone. I can order dinner from my phone using Grubhub or Seamless or whatever. And I started thinking, this is the direction the world is going. And I had that lens. I knew I wanted to get into the tech space a little bit, but I wasn't quite sure which vertical or which industry that was going to be in. So I spent a lot of time really thinking about it, assessing my own life and my own needs. And while I was in banking, I was fortunate. I was had all the not all the money in the world, but I was fortunate to earn some money. But again, working 100-hour weeks, like you have no time. So the bank account was growing. I had decided to invest in some rental properties myself. So bought a couple single family homes up almost near the Wisconsin border. And they're nice homes. But what I found is that I was working these crazy hours. I owned a couple of rental properties, but I was managing those units with a combination of spreadsheets, pen and paper checks, text messages, smoke signals, like all of this, these archaic tools for managing properties. And what I started thinking about was, there's a lot of people out there like me who are busy professionals. They own a couple rental properties, either to build some passive income, to save for retirement. And I was like, look, by 2030, this will all go online. And that was really the impetus for saying, look, we need to start a company in this space that really helps independent landlords like myself better manage the properties, save time doing it, while at the same time providing a more professional experience for the renters who are living in those units.
So is it like a matching kind of thing for them, or?
Yeah, so I would say we almost do everything but the matchmaking. Okay. Where landlords and tenants don't find each other, don't discover each other on our site, but really everything else between them that occurs. So everything from the rental application process, the tenant screening reports, the lease creation, lease signing, rent payments, especially now with COVID-19, contactless payments are a big thing. So renters are able to pay the rent online from a checking account or a debit or credit card. And then lastly, they can submit maintenance tickets directly through the portal. So really for the landlord and renter, it's everything they need in one place.
Oh, yeah, that's for years when I was renting, that's how we did it. So we paid online. But it was great to make that switch. I remember it actually was around that time period, 2012, 2013. It was the first time I started paying in line instead of bringing in a check. So that's pretty. And then just so they could schedule maintenance, all that kind of stuff, and right through the portal, basically. Very, very, very cool.
Yeah. It saves a ton of time for owners. It provides that professional level experience for the renters. I mean, in the US, I think about, half of the rental units in the US, there's 48 million rental units. About half of those are owned by big management companies, big institutional investors. The other half, Coach, are actually owned and managed by guys like us who are busy professionals. They're firefighters, they're teachers, they're attorneys, they're dentists. They're everyday people who own rentals. They historically never had access to the same tools and resources that the big management companies did. And that's really where we come in and we solve that problem.
That's an enormous marketplace. So you're solving an issue, and that's the biggest part about. And you mentioned that you listened to a few podcasts. Every one of the entrepreneurs that we've had on, that has been a theme where they've been real successful. Find an issue that either you had yourself or you discover, and fill that gap and solve that problem. So really, really interesting. So, and now let's dive into how you built the software and you became a coder. How do you go from being an investment banker, which is a certain mindset, okay, to being a coder, which, and you coded the software, you mentioned you coded the software yourself and developed it. How do you make that switch? Definitely, coding is a much more tedious process, and development is a much more tedious process. Those of you who out there who don't know, between from investment banking to coding. So talk to me how you develop those skills, develop that mindset.
Yeah, well, for me, it was really more of I would say almost a binary decision. It's like, we're going to do this or we're not going to do this. And I think throughout my life, that's been one of the things that has been really important is once I've personally decided to do something, it's like, we're going all in. I remember back in high school, like I didn't play football the first couple of years. And then the coach back in high school was like, all right, Ryan, like I see you in the weight room every day. Like you went from this like scrawny cross country runner to like now you're like bulking up and you're like a 200-pound like man almost, like you're playing football. And it was, I mean, flip of a switch. It was like went from like, not knowing anything about football to like playing football and playing varsity football going into the state playoffs and stuff. So bringing that back to coding, it was almost one of these like, look, if we're going to do it, we're going to like commit and we're going to go all in. I will say, I mean, that first year as an entrepreneur, it's exciting. You're like emotionally like riding that high. That does wear off. And I think that's what a lot of people in the audience who are thinking about maybe leaving their job need to keep in mind is that you've got to really be committed. You've got to be willing to put in the time and the effort and the persistence and the perseverance, like after that initial high wears off.
What are challenges that you've had to overcome? What are some of the things, in building the software, building your clientele base? So ultimately, once you build the software, you got to sell it. And, what are some of the challenges that you've had to overcome there?
Yeah, well, I think the big switch for us, and you're right. I mean, building it's only one part, getting customers is the other. And we're fortunate today. We've got more than 600,000 individual owners and renters who use our product all over the United States to manage rentals. So I think the biggest shift for me has actually been a mindset of going from actually sitting there learning to code, building the first product myself along with my co-founder, to now we've got a full team of people. They're not in our office today, obviously, because of COVID, but you can see behind us, we've got all these desks lined up. I mean, we've got an amazing team. And I think part of it has really been the mindset and the shift from going from, hey, I can control every last detail, to actually having to rely on others and really focus on, scaling myself through our incredible team. And giving up a certain amount of control in exchange for just being able to do more faster.
How did you mentally make that move? That's a tough thing for entrepreneurs. Probably the toughest thing. It was one of the toughest things for me. And I've gone through ups and downs in my business where we were Inc. 5000 growing company. Then I've gone through times where I've had to cut a lot of employees. We decentralized the company. So now all workers work from their homes, yep. Other than when they go to events. So how do you manage that process? What did you do to really go from having control and controlling every little detail to letting go and allowing everybody to work?
Yeah, well, I think that this is another, just like you've got to have that right mindset, and you've got to, in my opinion, commit to the change. And I think for me, back in 2015, 2016, as we were bringing on our first few people, it was really acknowledging and embracing the idea that, look, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you got to go together, and you've got to really build out a team. And so I think it was that mindset of, okay, again, committing, going all in on something. And at that point, I really acknowledged, look, we're going to have to build out a team. And what are all the risks and rewards of doing that? And I started looking at different risks of maybe they won't do things the way I want to do them, or maybe they won't put in the hours, or maybe this, or maybe that. And what I ultimately came up with was, okay, each of those are risks, and you've got to acknowledge those. But for me personally, I was able to go one by one and say, okay, what's the risk and how do we overcome it? And I think for me personally, a lot of it goes into actually being very upfront and transparent during the hiring and the onboarding process. We spend an inordinate amount of time actually thinking through whether a person is the right fit for our company. And we also have a very transparent conversation with all candidates about, this is who we are, these are the expectations. And look, if it's not for you, that's totally cool. And it's not It's not your problem. That's our problem. If we're not a good fit for you, it doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It just means maybe something's wrong with us. And so we have that conversation a lot during the interview process to really make sure that we're getting people who align with us, align with our core values, and want to really join our team.
So in finding those people, which is, I would say, the most difficult thing, right? When you're an entrepreneur, you're building your company, you then decide, okay, I'm going to take X amount of dollars that I'm now making, and now I'm obviously going to be making a little less profit for a while because I'm going to bring on XYZ person. And like you said, here are the risks, here are the rewards of it. How do you there's a lot of different methods to do this, and this is why I'm asking. Because there are people that hire people, they fail, they just get rid of them, and that's their process. And then eventually they get to the person that can do it. Or then there are people very meticulous in the process, which maybe sounds like, what is the value set that you have found has been most successful in working in your company, in the people that you hire?
Yeah, well, I think for us, we spend so much time trying to find those right people during the interview process. And we know that we're going to invest a lot into people even after they come on board. So I take a software engineer who joins our team. It'll take that person probably 3 to frankly 6 months maybe before they're fully productive. So that's a huge investment. I mean, we're committing almost a full year of salary to someone who may not be fully productive. Huge investment. So for us, that's why we spend so much time during that hiring process to make sure that we're really finding those right people who are a good fit. We're probably more on the mindset of if things aren't quite working how we want, we take more the internal locus of control and we say, look, now that we've brought you onto the team and we've made this investment, we're in it together. We're going to commit. We're going to figure out a way to make it work. And fortunately, we've had unbelievably low turnover on our team. Like two of our first 3 hires are with us 5 years later. I mean, we're extremely loyal as a company to our people. And I think in return, we get a lot of loyalty from our team.
Very interesting. And so then as far as now in software, it's a little different because obviously from a development side, you're going to have libraries of code and you're going to have the software that is nice. Even if someone leaves, you already have all that stuff. And usually it's backed up pretty efficiently. So you don't have that kind of as much of a mind share loss. But one of the things that I remember experiencing after being in business for a little bit over 10 years, I had almost no turnover, for a long time. And then all of a sudden, everybody decided, not, I would say everybody all at once, but it became one guy decided they'd like to do something different. Another guy one of our writers became a writer for Fox Sports, and then he now has his own show. And so a lot of the different things started to happen where our people who were, when I started my company, I was probably in my early 30s I was in my late 20s. But we were all in our late 20s, early 30s. And then all of a sudden people started having kids and families and they made moves, right? And it all happened at once. What do you do to continuously? I mean, your company's fairly young, so maybe I'm getting ahead of it, right? What do you start to do to make sure as you continue to grow that you can keep going in those stages of development and growth without having hiccups in that process where something like that happens, where we're all a part of the entrepreneurial spirit, and then some people decide to move on into stability land or something that, a large company, they want to do something different. How do you?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those, I think we're, gosh, how can I say this? I mean, we've experienced that a little bit, of course. I mean, right now we've got a 25-person team. When Lawrence, my co-founder, and I started the company, we were almost the exact same. We were late 20s. He had the funny story. So Lawrence was actually working at Goldman Sachs at the time. Lawrence got married, and then literally 2 weeks later put in his 2 weeks to start the company. Like he had this great job at Goldman, had just gotten married. And then over the first 2 or 3 years that we were starting the company, I mean, him and his wife, Megan, they had their 2 daughters and 2 kids. And so we went through that pretty early. I think what it's forced us to do is really acknowledge that, professional life and the business, while as a founder, for me personally, I mean, there's really no lines between work and play, and everything is kind of one and the same, and the business is life in a lot of ways. And I know for a lot of entrepreneurs it is. I think it's part of it for us is, though, acknowledging that different people will have different priorities in life, different opportunities will come up. I mean, Coach, for you, having that writer who got a gig at Fox, I mean, being able to go on and write for Fox Sports, like that's a dream scenario probably for that individual. And you just have to, like, in as much as it hurts to lose great people, you almost have to just be proud for them and acknowledge that you're building this like tribe that's going out and infiltrating other organizations, and they got their start with you. And in some ways that's empowering. And I know it certainly is for me whenever that happens.
Yes. And I think that's 100% the right mindset to have, because in the end they start to get, and I had to learn this the hard way, because when I started, I had a vision of where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And if it messed with my vision, I was just, it was very hard for me to handle. I mean, I'm into it now almost 17, 18 years. It's completely different from back then. But when I first started, I had this vision of where I wanted to go with everything. And then it wasn't until I was so adamant with my vision that I alienated some great people, and I had to learn from that. And quite frankly, people got pretty pissed off at me, and rightfully so, because who you are in your 20s, when you start to get a little more gray in you, and you start to learn some things, you want to have that same drive. So I have that same drive, but I learned from that process. What are some of the things that you feel that you're learning right now in building your company that you'd like to help other entrepreneurs understand as if they start to dive into this process?
Yeah. Well, it's, I mean, almost exactly like you, where we've had to learn so much along the way, and not only learn about managing people and dealing with different personalities on the team, but it's really almost introspectively learning about ourselves and learning how do we deal with those different emotional highs and lows. I mean, what's the old saying? If you want to sleep like a baby, start a company. You'll be up all night crying. I mean, that's one of those, like, I've had to adapt and try and force myself to learn to, like, be able to turn that part of my brain off at night. But I think being an entrepreneur, it's like this never-ending quest for learning. So for me, and what I would encourage a lot of people out there in the audience to think about, if you're considering starting a company, think about, what's your ultimate vision, and what are you trying to accomplish? Why are you trying to do it? Because that what are you trying to do, and that why you're doing it, that'll keep you up, but that will also help you power through some of the inevitable down moments of running a company. I think for me, the other thing that I've learned that's been really powerful is really having trust in the team that we're building, and being able to rely on them and almost hire good people and get out of their way. I think about, my role now as founder, CEO of the company. The best thing that I can do really is help everyone else on our team learn, grow, and develop their own skills. I think especially with a growing company now, if people on our team are learning and growing, they're going to take us a lot farther than I could single-handedly. So in some ways, I almost view myself as the coach of our team, where I can't single-handedly go out there and win games. I have to really focus on behind the scenes helping other people be better, and they're the ones that will ultimately go out and win the games for us.
That's a great approach, and I think that's probably why so many large corporations bring in very successful coaches to come and speak to you how they built their organization, how they built their team, how they motivated them. What school did you go to in college?
University of Illinois.
Illinois. Okay. Okay. Very cool.
More of a basketball school than a football school.
Oh yeah. I think they're getting a little better now. Quick question, because I'm curious about this. How much did school help prepare you to become an entrepreneur? I'm curious.
Well, so I think school taught me probably they call it three main things. Where three main things that I learned during school. So number one, the importance of just getting out there, putting yourself out there, be okay with getting into uncomfortable situations, whether it's going up and knocking on the door, trying to make that door-to-door sale, or talking with that cute girl at the bar. I mean, you just learn how to handle some of those uncomfortable situations. Number two, I think what school taught me was really more the framework and how to learn and how to think and how to explore different topics and how to think critically. I would say number three is school is also beneficial in that it instills and it forces you to learn to mature and to really take certain things as seriously as you need to. I mean, as a 21-year-old kid in college, you don't always have that, you don't always see the bigger picture, and you don't always necessarily know how certain actions trigger other things. And that's something that you can really learn during college, and I think has been beneficial.
Yeah, I found that, everybody's college experience is different. I feel that, choosing a place, that you can get those things that you just talked about is real important, and the right fit for them, and not just choosing a college to go to college, because I think coming out with the ability to think and to understand, and there's so much stuff now with because some of the leading entrepreneurs speak negatively about college, and I'm very, very careful on that. There are things that I have issues with. I went for free to undergrad in my first year of grad school because I played football. I was on scholarship, but having to pay for that last year of grad school, and understanding the value of that education and what that is, and it is important. But I think what's really the most important thing about the education is the experience of forced to interact with other people. What you learn from them, different types of people, the ability to learn to think. And the more professors I had that forced you to do that, whether it was in business class or I think it is real important. And I think because you do come from so many different, everybody comes from different backgrounds, getting that experience of what someone else's thought process might be is real important, because otherwise you're limited to your thought process from where you come from. And, it's good to see other people's perspectives. And so I hate when, education's kind of getting a rough rap, and they're rightfully so in certain aspects, especially the cost. But I don't think they take enough time to talk about how it doesn't make you successful, but it gives you the ability to think about what you want to be. And that's what that time period is. And it's a flaw when brilliant, when you talk about the Elon Musks of the world, or maybe, I don't know, Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg. By the way, Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates did go to Harvard. They were so smart that they could drop out of Harvard. I mean, 99.9% of us are not in those intellectual categories where you don't need help fostering your thinking, along a path. So that's a rare instance. So when people cite those examples, or even one of my favorite entrepreneurs, listen, Gary Vee, I think he's flawed in that as well, because he didn't go to a college that fostered that, and he's wildly successful, so thinks that that's not the way. And I think it's, for our young people, that's important to understand that for the most of us, if you don't go and get an education, you have the opportunity to do so, you end up missing out on the experience of the education. It's not just about what you learn in the book. And that's an important thing. So it's interesting to hear you say that, because I would say, like, I had a professor in my grad school. He didn't know one thing about entrepreneurship, in my opinion, but the fact that he forced me to think about things, even though I disagreed with him on almost everything, and I proved that to be more right than he was. It forced me to think about things. It ultimately gave me an opportunity to become an entrepreneur at one point, because I honestly was really just in the mindset of go work at a corporate job and maybe one day I'd be CEO, instead of making myself CEO.
Yeah, it's exactly what you said, Coach. I mean, it's not necessarily what you're going to learn in the books, because anyone can go out. You don't have to go to college to get the textbooks, but it's more the soft skills. It's the, how do you talk with people? How do you deal with people? How do you learn? It's more the how that is what college teaches you. It's not exactly what you learn. And I think that's really important. Is while the classes are important, getting good grades is important. It's much more of the kind of softer side of things that you wouldn't get if you totally skipped the college experience.
Absolutely, and it doesn't. And that's the other leap, I think, is that one does not dictate success. So whether you go to college or not, it doesn't mean, and that's where people get it confused. It is not about, because I guess originally it was sold, maybe when I was growing up, maybe a little bit older than you, not that much, but a little bit.
You got the gray hair, I got no hair. I mean,
you got no hair, there you go.
That's all I'm saying.
The success would come. I think it might have been sold back then. Success, you become successful because you go to college. And that's not the case. Success could come from a guy could come from nothing to be successful, never gone to college. A guy can go to college, be successful. A guy can go to college and become nothing. And it really is what you make of the world. But I think the personal growth, the beginnings, I would say the beginning of your personal journey, and that's when you go into corporate like you did, and you say, okay, you know what? This is good, but my goal is to be my own man, or to be great in this way, and I'm going to go do that. And I find that really interesting. I love, by the way, this is a big deal in Chicago too, all the time. The warehouse office that you have in the background.
Yeah. I think it's an old shoe factory from the early 1900s, and we've got. People desks crammed in here. It's that gritty Chicago Midwest startup ethos through and through.
Yeah, there's a company I used to do business with for many years called NCSA. They were down in Chicago, and they had the same original office, and now I think they took like 3 or 4 floors to become a real big company. But they started in that they still in the warehouse type, but they spruced it up and to a whole nother level. I remember the first time I went in there. I thought, wow, this is really cool. This is totally different from like New York and how where everybody's in the plush offices for many years. Although that's changing a little bit. So where does the journey go for you and your business from here? Where do you begin to vision your company for the future, and where would you like to go?
Yeah, well, I think for us, it's really all about how do we continue putting the customer first, putting the customer at the center of everything that we do. And we talk with them every day. Everyone on our team handles some amount of customer support every month. So we're on the front lines talking with our customers, listening, acutely listening to like exactly what they're asking us for. We get so much feedback, so many different product requests, different things that they want us to morph into. And so I think I honestly, Coach, I can't give you a clear answer. I can't tell you where we'll be 5 years from now, because I don't know where our customers are going to lead us. So I think we take that approach of let them almost guide us, and we're almost just along for the ride. So I think along the way, we'll continue focusing on hiring the best and the brightest. We're currently hiring, avail.co/jobs. Head over, check it out. But we're going to hire great people. We're going to continue focusing on making the rental market as efficient as possible, improving lives for landlords and tenants.
Where do you see the rental market going? So crazy time period right now, a lot of different ways. Maybe scary for a lot of people in real estate and rentals. And where do you see that marketplace going?
Yeah, well, a couple of thoughts. So number one, everyone's going to need a roof over their head. I mean, shelter is one of your basic needs. I think that the office market, commercial real estate market, a little bit scarier, depending on whether people continue working from home, but inevitably people will need a place to live. So I think the rental market, the housing market will be fine. Second thing I would say on that is, unfortunately right now with COVID-19, we're seeing a lot of, I think, big issues and big challenges that have always existed. I mean, issues with affordability, issues with accessibility. I mean, these are not new issues. They've been there, but COVID is just shining a light on them. So I think there's got to be a lot of shift and changes there. Lastly, I think the rental market is great. I mean, I think for a lot of individuals, home ownership does make sense. I think for people looking to settle down and grow a family makes sense. But for a lot of individuals out there, there's nothing wrong with renting. It's actually financially probably a better outcome. The guys behind the Case-Shiller housing index have actually the data to prove that renting financially is a better thing. So I think the rental market will continue growing, be strong. Housing market will be just fine.
How about markets like the Airbnb market, where I guess that, what would you call that? Short-term rentals marketplace, or vacation rentals, which is what, VRBO, or and I'm sure you're familiar with all these things. But where do you see those things going?
Yeah, those are interesting because the whole short-term stay, vacation stay market has really blossomed over the last 10 or 12 years with Airbnb. I think it a lot depends on how quickly the economy reopens, when people will be comfortable traveling again. I know within the last day or so, there's been some data from the CDC that's come out that says actually the odds of you getting COVID from actually touching a surface are pretty low. So I think that bodes well for things like Airbnb properties. Whereas if you could get it from a surface, maybe you'd be more apt to want to stay in a hotel where they've got maintenance staff cleaning the property every day. So I think Airbnb, those properties will probably see a short-term blip, but I think long-term, the whole notion of being able to travel and stay like a local, that should recover and should be fine. Given you probably look 2 to 3 years out for that to fully recover.
It's a fascinating time. It's a time where a lot of people who have maybe worked in corporate, maybe they lost their jobs. I say this is the time to seize the opportunity. If you ever dreamed about being an entrepreneur, this is the time to go and do it. Like I said, I started my journey literally right after 9/11, within 6 months of it. I mean, I was already thinking about it. And, that became to me a tragedy, became a situation where I just knew this is not what I wanted to do anymore. And no better time than that. Now, it's important for people to understand they're thinking about entrepreneurship. It is not as simple as, okay, I start a company and I'm going to make X amount of dollars. There are some people that will happen to, but it is literally a grind. And even when you make those dollars and you gain a certain level of success, like I said, I've been an Inc. 5000 company, a whole other host of issues come in. Competitors come in. This is the one thing that I always find. So, you could tell me how you've dealt with this as you've grown. We had in our business, this might sound crazy because camps have been around sports. You probably did them in high school yourself. But what we were doing was like combine and showcase, like really recruiting based stuff. So and we focused on kids that weren't going to be going to, like, I guess what we call underclassmen. So we kept saying to ourselves, for the first few years, nobody's competing with us in this space. And we just kept growing. And we're like, okay, we'll run 50 events. We got up to at one point we were running 150 events around the country, wow, which was absurd. We saturated the marketplace. And we kept saying, when are competitors going to realize it? Eventually they did. And that's when the whole world changed, and we had to really adapt. And it was tough, and we did adapt. And we had to reduce some events. We had to make more some things more exclusive, so people would come and provide more service. I would say the service we provided really in our growth phase probably was horrible compared to what we do now. We laugh when people complain now because we do so much more than we did back in the beginning because we were thrown against the wall. It was all sticking. How do you handle competitors coming into the marketplace, adapting your business to continue to grow?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think we do have competitors. But the thing that I share with our team all the time is, look, let's continue focusing on the customer, control the things that we can control. And what the guy down the street does, that's outside of us. So let's maintain that internal locus of control. Let's control and really focus on continuing to deliver that really good service that you mentioned, Coach, and focus on the customer and deliver and provide value for them. Make sure that they're feeling good about what they're paying for. And at the end of the day, if they don't like you or don't like your product for whatever reason, they go with a competitor. I mean, so be it. But I think for the most part, it's really just like, you got to find a niche, find a customer, make sure that they feel like they're getting value for what they're paying for, and then let the chips fall where they will.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important, is that focus on what you have to do to be the best that you can be in your company, because you cannot control what somebody else comes up with, but you can, if you're focusing on doing the best that you can for your customers and for your employees, they'll figure it all out. And you'll be in a situation where you can always continue to compete. And it's not a straight line to the top. It's a jagged one. And there's ups and downs, and not everybody's looking. You don't have to be to the top, but you have to. It's not a zero-sum game. That's one of the big things that, when I talk to other people that I interview and people that I'm friends with that start companies, it's not a zero-sum game. There's plenty of areas that people can succeed in. So if a customer said to me, you guys don't do this, this group does this. And one of the things that I've been big on is, this is what we do. If you like what we do, we're for you. If you don't like what we do, then the other group might be a better group for you. And that's okay too. Do you approach kind of competitiveness like that, and hey, this, we're going to do the best that we can, and this is what we provide. We may not provide everything in the world, but what we provide well. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. Just like you said, I mean, if you try and be everything to everyone, you'll end up making no one really, really happy, and no one will be really, really passionate. And that's what you really need. is you need those early adopters. You need those people who are just passionate about what you're doing. Those are the ones who will make you successful. If you try and put out a mediocre product, maybe that does everything and has all the different features, functionality, bells, whistles that every customer asks for, ultimately it's just going to be this like kind of mess of spaghetti code in my language, and it's not going to be a good fit for anyone. So yeah, I share the same belief where we actually turn away some customers. We refer them to competitors who may ultimately be a better fit for them.
Very cool. On that note, where can people find you? Where can they find your company? Maybe somebody wants to come work for you. Where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you. So anyone listening who owns a rental property or is a renter, head over to our website. It's avail.co, avail.co. For anyone looking for maybe their next career move, wants to get in with a fast-growing company, avail.co/jobs lists all of our openings for different positions on our team. We're hiring across all parts of our team, from operations, marketing, and product development. And then if anyone wants to just follow along and join the story, follow us on all the social media. We're at Hello Avail. Drop by, say hello. Come find us on social. We'd love to engage. And right now, given everything going on in the world, we're putting out a lot of really interesting content around COVID-19. People can check that out as well. A lot of different interesting trends we're seeing in the rental market. So.
And you said social media was at Hello Avail?
Yep.
Okay. HELLO Avail, AVAIL. Yep. All right. We'll put that in the show notes as well. So thanks so much for coming on. I really, really enjoyed talking with you. And it doesn't hurt that you were a fellow ex-football player. So,
for a couple of years.
Hey, man, once a football player, always a football player. Even if you're cross country first. My brother was was actually a run. That's what he did. He was running cross country and track at Duke and stuff. So you cover. My father's a long time track coach, still is to this day at 79 years old.
Wow.
So, yeah. But it's great talking with you. I wish you the very best. And come on anytime. Anything new happens, you want to get back on here, we'd love to have you on.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Coach. Really appreciate it, and hope you stay well.
Thank you very much. All right. Have a great day.